about why I'm standing. I stand for election because I'm from the Southwest and I care about the Southwest. I went to school in North Devon, my family is from Cornwall, and I'm concerned about the vulnerable in our society. The very young, the very old, the disabled, the mentally ill, and the unemployed. All of us have a right to live in a society in which there is freedom from fear and in which we place an equal value on one another. Freedom from fear was one of the great four freedoms advocated by Roosevelt. The other three being freedom of expression, freedom from want, and freedom of religion. We have a police force to deliver precisely that most precious of freedoms to our vulnerable. Freedom from fear for each and every one of our citizens. Each area of the country has its own crime pattern. In the Southwest, by and large, our crime levels are slightly lower than the national average, with the disturbing exception of drug and alcohol-related crime and, indeed, violent crime in general. We need action to turn our society around and help us to restore human dignity. Some say that the reason we get slightly higher levels of abuse in the Southwest, slightly higher levels of social violence, is because we are better at reporting crime. That may, in fact, be the case. But regardless, something needs to be done to deliver a safer world. Can policies introduced by the Police and Crime Commissioner help the Chief Constable and our excellent police force to deliver that safer world? I believe that they can. And I'm standing for election to prove that that is indeed the case. The discussion which follows is with Martin Bell, a Cornish friend who has his own ideas about the way forward for police in the Southwest and whose opinion I value.
Right, William Morris, you have decided to stand as a candidate for the election of Police and Crime Commissioner for Devon and Cornwall this year, and I would very much like to know why you want to do that job, what do you think you can bring to it, and what are your qualifications that set you apart from the other political party candidates?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, most of the candidates have some link to policing, and for most of them it's fairly tenuous. I mean, in my case, I was a prison visitor for many years and have that association, and that gave me a feeling of a burning need to, well, I was very disturbed by the way the criminal justice system works, or fails to work. Many of the people in our jails are in there for petty crimes, some of them for fines, non-payment of fines. Then you have the whole business of the actual degree to which violent crime is drugs and alcohol based, which is very disturbing. So there's a whole range of issues, and the large numbers of youngsters in young offenders units disturb me greatly, because that's not the place for youngsters. We used to have a borstal system where kids were put into, who got into trouble, were put into farm schools, essentially. That was very inadequate, but far better than putting them into jails. You know, you're talking 16-year-olds. So these are issues. But sorry, yes.
But let's get back to you as a person. Your father was born in Cornwall. You were raised in Cornwall. You went to school in Devon. So you know the area that you're proposing to represent. You have your roots here.
Yes.
And so you're talking from knowledge of the people of Devon and Cornwall and how crime.
Well, I would hope
impacts
so.
on
I mean, the point is, obviously, a number of the candidates are local. I'm not unique in that. I think that one of the issues is that I would hope that whoever wins is an independent. I do strongly feel that political politics does not belong in this kind of.
And so you're going to have a lot less money to work with
Yes.
than in the past.
Yes. And
How are you going to address that? Are you going to focus uniform policing more sharply in certain areas? Because it has been said that one of the consequences of the reduction in government grants to police forces around the country is the end of the neighbourhood policing concept.
Well, it's been brutally harmed and damaged, but there are ways forward. I do believe in targeted, and this sounds quite draconian, but I don't mean it in this way, targeted zero tolerance policing with kind of street level restorative justice, so that the officer on the beat, and the officer on the beat does have the power to make his own decision as to whether, his or her own decision as to whether to arrest or not to arrest. It's very much, we empower our police force in that way at grassroots level. So I believe that we can have targeted zero tolerance policing and deal with the difficult spots. There are difficult spots that are causing high levels.
A major cause or a major demand on uniformed police time are the pubs and the bars in the main cities.
Yeah.
Would you take a much tougher line with the
Very
pubs
different
and the
line,
bars?
I think. I going on into detail, but I would like to see some wet rooms with police-employed nurses, so that people can, and that's quite radical, but you can put people somewhere where they can just dry out effectively and under supervision, without having to lock them up and arrest them in the cell and put them in cells, because it's a huge problem. And they're clogging up the hospitals. I mean, drunks are a real problem. This is a way forward. I believe it's a way forward.
But what about the cause, the bars and the pubs?
Well, yeah, the underage drinking. We need to stop. There's a prequel to this. The supermarkets selling booze to children, and this happens too much and is not properly controlled. You get these people tanking up before they go out of an evening. I mean, I've seen it in so many kids, because the supermarket booze is so cheap, and there are a whole range of issues here. Now,
what could the police commissioner do about that?
The police commissioner can start to make a difference. He can campaign. Whoever's in power. There are other issues. We need a proper detox centre for drugs and alcohol for under 21s. We don't have one. We don't have that in Britain, let alone in Devon and Cornwall. There are ways in which we can deal with youth crime, and much of crime is youth crime, without just resorting to the ultimate deterrent of prison. There's a lot that can be done, and a lot that should be done to make this a safer and better Devon and Cornwall.
What about the availability of drugs to teenagers in Devon and Cornwall? We know it is widespread.
Well,
it's not just in the cities.
Yes. There are kind of two levels of drug taking. You have the end-of-the-line syndrome, whereby a town like Penzance has the highest per capita rate of registered heroin users in Britain, per capita. They're massively more, the big cities, Bristol or whatever, will have massively more heroin takers. But if you're talking per head of population, then you'll find, oddly, that this syndrome is there. Now, what do you do? That is, in a way, that is a problem, because heroin use makes people are very aggressive when they come off heroin, and that you get this aggressive begging and so forth. But the real problem is young people on drugs and alcohol getting out of control. It's curious with crime in Devon and Cornwall. Much of this crime is summer crime, because you have a large influx of people and the local infrastructure has to deal with, and not just the police, the hospitals and so on, has to deal with in some areas, the doubling of the population. And it is, so it's a unique situation. What do we do with it? My intention is to set up a drugs and alcohol task force that looks at this and tries and works on ways forward. I've heard arguments. We have decriminalized minor. We haven't legalized, we've decriminalized minor drugs. So people are not arrested for having hashish in their pockets anymore. Those days are gone.
Well, homegrown hashish, particularly in Cornwall, where it's called skunk, is very powerful.
Yes.
It's far more powerful than when I was a student, having a
The worst problem with that, in a way, my worst concern is actually what it does to the kids, because if you're talking about serious skunk, it can
mind altering, behavior altering.
Yeah,
yes.
well, it can affect their cognitive ability in later years, because it is so powerful now compared to the kind of stuff that was going around in our youth.
And it's being grown in rented houses.
Sure.
Often by Vietnamese gangs.
Well, I mean, it's a problem that we have to deal with. Now, how we deal with this, I think, obviously, strategically, the Chief Constable needs every help that he can from any police and crime commissioner in support. And he makes the operational decisions. We can only set the targets and assist in helping get resources, and that's a big ask, but there are things that can be done. But we do set the targets, we do set the goals.